you're still out in the foyer, we'd love you to make your way into the auditorium. And everybody else looks like they're seated. It's lovely to be in the church this morning. Don't you love coming to church? Yes. Where would you be? Anywhere else? Why would you? It's lovely to be here. Morning to everybody online, of course, and in our chapel service. I'm so looking forward to this time with Jess, but it's lovely to be with the church family. Jess, it's lovely to have you here with us this morning.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
25th of July. The 25th of July is a pretty special day in the household of the Van Drimmelens.
Yes.
And this year I believe that on the 25th of July, Scarlett, Scarlett, that's what she tells me, Scarlett turned 5.
She did.
She did. And I reckon that on the 24th, or sometime leading up to then, there had been conversations with her mother on just how we're going to celebrate the 25th of July. Was there birthday cakes and...
It was a whole year in planning.
All year in planning.
And anyone with a 4-year-old or 5-year-olds knows what that's like, I'm sure.
And so she's gone to bed at night, or you've gone to... Everyone's been waiting for the 25th of July. And then you get up in the morning and it's her birthday. And I'd love you to tell us what happened next.
Yeah, well, obviously you should be very excited, shouldn't you? It has been, like I said, a big build-up to this big day, and but the 25th of July finally came, and little Miss Scarlett was, woke up and she was just feeling a bit crook and had a bit of... just complaining of really itchy legs. And middle of winter, you automatically think, she's got dry skin, and so just lather some moisturiser on her, and Bob's your uncle kind of thing. But no, she's like, it's not working. I'm like, it's fine. You just got to get used to it. We just need to keep putting moisturiser on. She hadn't quite registered yet, like she knew, but she was too distracted by this frustration. And anyway, she had school, and so we're trying to get out the door and getting excited. And as I was just talking to her in the kitchen, she just had a bout of vomiting, and I was like, "Oh, Scarlett, this has come out of nowhere. Were you feeling sick?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm a bit sick." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, we won't go to school then." It's kind of funny because every year, almost now, on her birthday, the 25th of July, she vomits. And I don't know if she is just that much of a build-up and that's what happens, or what. But yeah, all her birthday parties, most of them have been cancelled or rescheduled because of that. But anyway, she had just a little bit of vomiting, so she kind of just took some time and had a sleep, and then later that day we had her birthday dinner, and we did all the presents and everything, and when she was opening her presents, she was wanting this book thing that has buttons and whatever, and it has these little symbols on it. And she said to me, "Mummy, I can't see the symbols, but if I hold it out there, I can see it, but I can't see it." So anyway, she wakes up with, it's saying that she's got blurry vision. And so I was like, we've just had, so her birthday weekend, her cousins were over, and we had a big sleepover, and they covered her face in makeup, as well as my sons and whoever else, whoever was around and willing to be painted, got painted. And so I just assumed some of this blurry vision was associated to makeup, because I'm telling you, it was everywhere. And so we cleaned her eyes, and yeah, fair enough, there was a little bit of, green eyeshadow hiding there somewhere, and but that didn't kind of help. And, the next day she, persisted and just was unable to read the things that she normally would be able to read. And, again, I just didn't think much of it. And so she went off to kindy the next day, and was complaining now, a little bit of sore legs, but we had just spent the afternoon at Inflatable World on the Sunday, and you know, when you're 5 years old and you've got your cousins there, it's like non-stop jumping and running, and I would have sore muscles after that. And so I just thought, you know, the things she was complaining of was just as a result of our big party weekend. And then, as I guess the week progressed, the teachers were a little bit concerned because she was starting to sleep a lot throughout that week, and she was just you know, not her chirpy self, and probably by about so her birthday was on a Monday, and that was the morning that she first started, some of these symptoms started presenting, and then by the Wednesday she was unable to kind of bend down to put her shoes on, and it was too painful for her. And then Thursday, she'd pretty much just slept a lot of the day. It was just I just assumed she must be a bit unwell. And then Friday, I could notice she was getting very weak, and so we went to the chemist, and I just chatted with them, and you know, I said that I think she's a bit crook and she's complaining of a lot of leg pain. Do you think that's something I should be concerned about? And they suggest it's probably a good idea to go see a GP, and so we went out and saw the GP, and in our they could definitely tell something was not right with her legs, and at that point she saw a couple of doctors that afternoon, and they put it down to a type of reactive arthritis. So that was for me, that was what they thought she had. And so I'm like, oh, she's got this diagnosis. Like, what does that even look like? Is this something that's going to kind of present every time she's sick? Because it's pain. She's in a lot of pain, and she walked like someone that would have, some really tight joints. And so we just continued to monitor her over the weekend, and on that Saturday morning, you know, the way she was walking, it was that cerebral palsy style walk, and so by that point you could see it in her arms, and there was a lot of fatigue. So and then that afternoon she collapsed and could no longer weight bear. So it was all these little things, and I'm just like, oh, it's a pretty tough thing, this reactive arthritis. Like, what's gonna, you know, how do we manage this? Anyway, and we kept her home Sunday from church, obviously, and I came still, and the family stayed home, and at that morning, she was just still quite fatigued and sore. And the doctors had said, look, if she begins to get very tired and struggles to wake up, it's probably worth taking her down to emergency and getting her reassessed. And even though she was fatigued, she was still quite alert up until that point. And then, Sunday morning, it was just, she just wanted to lay on the couch and not really move. She, by that point, was only really wanting to lay on one side of her body. It was quite sore for her, but I couldn't see anything. She had no other symptoms she didn't even have really cold or flu-like symptoms to indicate that there was anything else going on. And so you just kind of, oh, do you go, don't you go? Anyway, so I came here on Sunday morning, and during the worship, and there was a song playing, and the words in the song, interesting, was what's that one with the bones? These bones will sing. And because up until that point, I thought it was her bones, and she's got this arthritis stuff, and this is so invasive, and I'm just like singing this song over hers, and her bones will sing. This is just believing that she will have relief and healing in Jesus' name. And so I was just singing these words over her, and obviously I had actually got up and shared over communion about the multitude of our anxieties, his comfort delights my soul. And that was actually my devotion that morning. That scripture had given me the comfort that what was going on, just in the midst of everything else of just life, it was all starting to pile up. And so, it was just a real encouragement for me, and to be able to share from the depths of my own heart and my own journey. And so I was just here chatting with one of our lovely ladies that come here, who's also a nurse, and just sharing with her what was going on with Scarlett. And she's like, you need to take her down to the hospital. And so I left and I called the family at home and just to see how she's going. And by that point, she was really struggling to stay awake. And so we got the ambulance out and they took her down to the base. And started, obviously we were quite concerned. She really, that she could still walk at that point, but you had to hold her hand. She couldn't weight bear on her own. And so we just kind of navigated the hospital that way. And obviously they needed to admit her because there was still a lot of questions. And at that point, they'd tested her for a number of viruses, and it had come back clear, although when they admitted her, they'd do some further testing. And so she had tested positive to what they called a para-influenza type 2 or type A or B or one of the numbers. There's that many. And so I was like, okay, this is interesting that she's got this virus. And so up until that point, the plan was obviously to run quite a significant amount of testing. But once she tested positive to this virus, it was just, okay, the viruses are doing lots of weird things in children's bodies at the moment. And so we kind of just hit a standpoint. And where there was it was just monitoring her really. And I was noticing her getting worse and worse each day. We were there for a few days. But I just couldn't get any further with the medical team that was seeing her at that point. And so I felt they were comfortable with her being discharged. And at that point I was like, well, I think it would be helpful to just get another opinion, just because I felt like in my heart of hearts that there was something else going on. And which is really hard because you try not to get all worked up in the moment and go, you're not listening to me, whatever. But anyway, I didn't. I held myself together, tried to be kind. And so we moved on and we went and saw my GP, which that was the only person I wanted to see. I just needed to see my GP because I trusted his with the way that he treats and advises and all of that kind of stuff because of my own health journey. And so we were lucky enough to get in and to see him that next day. And he's one of those doctors, great, honestly, so good. But if you're a minute late, you miss your appointment. And it was just so hard getting Scarlett out the door and in the car and just all of that mucking around. It took so long to get there. So we were late. And thankfully the nurses remembered her from just the few days before that they were there, and they couldn't believe how far that she was still struggling and how worse it had gotten. So they really advocated to obviously be seen, and thankfully we got seen straight away, and it was all good. And he was like, I'm so grateful for his honesty, but he basically just said that I have never seen this before, and you need to go back to the hospital. So he organised for us to see another specialist, and we went and saw them, and they kind of just because what had started happening at this point. So she could no longer walk at all. So when we first went into hospital, she could walk and you could hold her hand. By this point, she was, you had to carry her. She was so pained, she could hardly even hold her neck up. It was like, the body was just in absolute shutting down of some kind. And anyway, and so she just, we proceeded to go back to the hospital to see another specialist who, again, had never seen it, but thankfully they began liaising with the Queensland Children's Hospital and the neurological team down there. And so he was quite concerned that it was more neurological than a virus, and so just with there was by that point obvious all the, when you do the reflex tests and things like that. So there was none of that. It was pretty much zero. There was no response from a lot of her limbs. So yeah, she just they proceeded to tell us about go through a million different things about what they could think it could be, but every single time it was kind of like, just not sure. So we liaised with the team down at the Queensland Children's Hospital who strongly encouraged for us to head down because they had some ideas about what it could be, and the testing that was required needed to be done with them. So at that point, though, we was completely still in the dark. We just had no idea what was going on. All I knew is that she was just getting worse and worse, and by that point, we were in hospital, and she is just almost non-responsive. There is just no movements happening in her body, and we tried, you'd try and take her to the toilet or something like that, and her, her legs, she just couldn't even get her brain to talk to her legs to get this one in front of the other foot. There was just nothing, but she was refusing to sit in a wheelchair as well. So it was just full on. But I remember when they decided to send us to Brisbane, but still being completely in the dark. And at that point still, because all her vitals kept becoming were really good. So she was, passing so many different tests. And so it was really difficult because you just kind of keep going to the side, being sidelined by another emergency, which is good, that's fine. But I remember sitting there thinking, at what point will this become an emergency? Because I was seeing this every day, this just getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, at what point is it going to get to will it be seen as something that we need to rush about? But anyway, you just kind of wait patiently, and you're trusting and praying and doing whatever you can and that kind of thing. And so, we were shipped down by the next day through the ambulance, and that was a really hard night that night, because it was just getting so bad, and I just remember feeling so in the dark and really scared, and I've never felt that kind of fear before. So it was definitely a very, very hard 24, 48 hours at that point when we were in the unknown, but knowing that it was beginning to escalate. And the moment we got down to the Queensland Children's Hospital, she began aspirating just out in the waiting area, waiting to go into the emergency as they were trying to check her in. And there's this nurse at the front, and she must be the top-notch nurse in that department, and she had about 3 or 4 phones, and she's on one, the other one's on holds, there's others buzzing in the background, and she's juggling all this thing, and she sees Scarlett aspirating, and up until that point, it turns out she'd been aspirating quite a lot, but they thought this was a cough of this virus that she had tested positive to. So she took it very seriously, and from the moment that we got down there, she was rushed into their area where there was just constant supervision, and it was like every single symptom was not downplayed, and so you went through. They did the team there were just amazing in listening and responding, and obviously they were of the idea of knowing what could be going on here, and so she was at that point. I don't know if we've got a photo actually. Yeah. Oh, that's me. Oh, there. Here we go. I don't know if there was one where she couldn't lift her arms, but at that point she was like, there was no movement. She was at the point she was like a floppy doll, and but we still had no idea what was wrong, and I was so grateful that by that point they were able to recognise that there was something serious going on, and they had their ideas about what it was, and so we just continued to trust their what they were thinking, and all the different tests that they were running at the time. And the most important thing that they were concerned about by the time we got to Brisbane was her lungs, because what had started happening is her lungs, her breathing and things began to become weakened, and so that was what was quite concerning by that point. But by that night, they had done MRIs and spine tests and different things, and she was confirmed positive for Guillain-Barré syndrome, which, I had no idea what it was, and I'm sure most people had never heard of it either. And but basically, it's an autoimmune reaction to a body fighting virus, and she'd had a number of different viruses leading up to the onset of this, and basically it's just the body sees its body, like your immune system sees the body as a foreign object, and so it starts attacking at the feet, which explains why she was starting to get some funny sensations in her legs earlier on in the piece, and just attacks and is an ascending attack, and so it just continues to go and go and go to the point where the last things to go are those vitals, so those organs, your lungs, your heart, and things like that. And so that's when the machines will show that something's wrong, but if it gets to that point, that's when it's almost too late. So we were lucky that at that point they had the diagnosis, and we were able to just focus now on this recovery, which they explained to us that she would have an 80% chance of recovery, and being young, it obviously worked in her favour as well. So that was a Thursday evening that all of that came through, and that was sadly not the end of it. But because she had such weakened breathing, weak lungs, she had to be monitored in the ICU for quite a few days, and you're just trusting their team, and I honestly believe in those spaces it is such a remarkable moments. Miracles happen over and over again in those places, and I know the medical team and all of that kind of stuff, they're just doing what they think they need to do in those moments of just setbacks or uncertainties. And there were times when it got really, really scary, and I remember one night she'd had a really serious aspiration, and it got right down here, and they had to get the tubes down to suck everything out, and it was horrible. And by that point she couldn't talk. She'd lost the use of all her swallowing muscles and her speech muscles, and she was just just laid there. There was nothing, and very little response anyway, other than her effort to yell. And I remember feeling, at one point that night when it had got quite serious again, and being that sense of being really scared and really in the dark, and feeling like this isn't the worst of it's not over yet. And honestly, that the song we were just singing today about, in the morning, however it went. I'm so bad at remembering lyrics, but it's like in the morning, and then they wake up, and then there was this breath in their lungs, and it was just it was new. And I remember coming back. We would alternate who would look after Scarlett in ICU, and I would go and have a sleep one night, or sleep by her bed and that kind of thing. And so when she was, I was over at Ronald McDonald's house, staying over there, and which they're amazing, aren't they? What they do. And I just remember, feeling so out of control, being away from Scarlett, and just not knowing what was going on or what might happen that night. And it was like 3 a.m. waking up with a little bit of nerves, and just praying and knowing that whatever I walk into that morning, that I know that my God is sovereign, and His hand is there, and is just so near, and that peace and that confidence that we had throughout this whole time. It was just amazing. But I remember walking in, and honestly, I could not believe what I saw. She was like she was sitting up, and there was life in her again. She seemed to be breathing really well, and I was just like, what? How did this happen? Like, she has gone from being like just completely on her bed, unable to move, to all of a sudden the physio was there and different ones, and she was awake, she was alive, and that was it. I was like, cool, we're past it, we're moving on. We can focus on recovery now. And that's what we did. We spent the next couple of months, 6 weeks or whatever, rehab and learning to walk and learning to eat again and all of those different things. And here she is now, so well, continually just surprising all the medical team at just her spirit, her strong spirit. And I remember that, like, one of the favourite things she loved in her different therapy sessions was the music therapy. And the day she got her vocal cords back so she could talk, she started talking, but she couldn't laugh and she couldn't sing, because that uses your stomach muscles. And they had not returned yet. The day that came back, though, oh my goodness, she, I don't know if there's a photo of her with a guitar and one of her cousins visiting, but she sung seriously at the top of her lungs with this, and it was This Girl Is on Fire by Alicia Keys. And the whole ward honestly came running, because it just sent shivers through that place, because we hadn't heard her, and you hadn't heard her laugh for weeks, and it was the most beautiful sound. And she started singing in the shower again, and it would echo through the ward, and like the nurses that were musical, they would come in and like, she's getting these ranges, and she's, the melody, and I don't know what they're talking about, but she's doing it. And I'm like, oh yeah. I don't know, but she was doing it. And it was a beautiful, beautiful day. Yeah.
She's still not fully recovered?
No, so she's walking now, obviously. You've probably seen her around a little bit now. She's getting around. She's even moved past needing a lot of work aids and things like that, like walking aids. And but the biggest thing we're probably managing now is pain and fatigue. And so, night times are really quite hard for her. And she gets just really unusual sensations in her feet and in her body still. But one of those significant ones is her feet, where nighttime especially, they just burn. And you touch them and they are hot. And so that's really uncomfortable and painful for her. and that we don't know how long some of these things will progress for. But she's getting back to her normality. I think she was just so focused the moment we came back, so focused about coming back to things that were her normal. And so that was obviously kindy and church and just seeing her friends and all of those kind of things. And she is just,
How important was your faith during this time?
Look, I think the biggest thing through it all was obviously, I remember when we were out of ICU and they moved us to the neurological ward, and that was kind of like a week I felt of somewhat of healing from what we had been through. And she was still very much bedridden, but it was very stable. She was a lot more stable. And at that point, my emotions and my anger and my, all of those different things about different things that happened early on in the piece were starting to kind of surface. And I honestly believe when you come to him and as he is just there supporting you, and the best way that I can explain it is that I honestly felt like we were in the dark, and it was a darkness I hadn't experienced before because there was so much unknown. It didn't matter how much I tried to look and ask questions or anything like that, there was just nothing, and it was darkness. And I felt that through that journey, his hand broke through the shadows of darkness and were outstretched toward us, reigning as sovereign Lord and governing the whole thing. And the timing, there were ordained timing, there was the way that we got before different specialists and things in those moments. I just could not deny and honestly just stand here today to testify about his sovereignty and how he was Lord, but also comforter and counselor and just an ever-present peace through that difficulty. And, we were asked, do you guys have a faith or something? And I don't know what we were carrying because I was not there to tell people about Jesus. But there was something obviously in that space, and he was there, and it was wonderful to be able to speak and encourage some of the nurses that we got to know about our own journey. And so all I know is the most beautiful thing was knowing that he was there. And in the moments it can feel that he's apart, but it's as you look back that you're like, there he was, right smack bang in the middle, part of it all, But what was even more remarkable is that faith has obviously led me to be part of this incredible community here at Civic. And we were like, I think we'd spent about 2 weeks in hospital, and we had been flooded with love and prayers and support, and Janet, through my mum, had organised for a heap of meals and finances and things like that to be gifted to us. And the timing, it was just remarkable. We were literally carried through this by the family and the church. And I was blown away. It moved me like no end. And I honestly think what kept us focused and what kept us continually hoping and moving forward was the hope and faith of my family and of you guys here. We could not have done it alone. And I was even talking to Jackie this morning, and she was just saying about how God places the lonely in families. And I really believe I'm already part of a family. There was no opportunity for me to feel alone. There was no opportunity for me to feel abandoned or to stay in that darkness. I was so strengthened by the wonderful family of God. And so my faith constantly was just fed and strengthened in that capacity, yeah.
Sadly, our time is gone.
Yeah.
But what I'd love to do right now, I think we're all still quite happy just to sit, but what I'd wonder, would you please pray? I'm going to ask in a minute for people that may be going through things. I mean, you've been explaining this incredible roller coaster that you had no idea about, and 3 months on, we're most of the way through it, but you're still, having to work with it. And yet you're here testifying about how your faith has sustained you and Mick, the family, and how important your church family as well as your own family is. But I don't think if there's anyone better to pray than you out of that experience. And so right now I'm going to ask every one of us just to close our eyes. And I ask to close your eyes because, if there are people who are going through tough times, I don't necessarily think it's important that everybody else sees us put our hands up to be able to go, they're having a tough time. They're having a tough time. So we're all closed our eyes. No one's looking around. But if you are going through a tough time, it may not be with children. It may be with some other things. It could be with sickness in your own body. It could be jobs. It could be financial issues. It could be relational matters. It could be any number of things. But it's hard. It's hard going. And you've possibly felt like that you're on this roller coaster and it's just come out of nowhere. If you'd love Jess to pray for you right now, I'd love you just to put your hand up. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, all right. They're all over there, Jess. I don't know if you saw them, but there's a number of people who've just been put their hands up there. And so we've seen those hands. And Jess, I'd love you just to pray for them. Would you please do that?
Father, I thank you so much for your concern and your cares and your love for all of us here this morning. And I find it remarkable that you're drawn and you're drawn to our difficulties, to our brokenness, and you're drawn to respond. And one of the greatest things that you have to give is your grace and your mercy. And that is extended towards us forever. And this is the year of God's favor, which is the year of his grace. This is the year, the moment that he wants to continue to support and to uplift and to grow and to enable us to have the strength to endure whatever difficulties and battles that we are facing. Because I know for me personally, the battle's still going on. There are still things in the background and in the unseen, and it's the things that people don't see that can actually weigh us down the most. And so, Father, I pray for every person here that is experiencing the wear and tear of life, whether that is through the big dramatic moments or whether that is through things that people are rarely even aware of. I just know that you are right there, and I pray that your ever-present help would just guard their hearts today from despair. And Lord, as their faith is placed constantly in you, that their hope grows. And we talked about this living hope, but I just pray right now that faith, it is not a faith that is, or a hope that is driven or planted in fantasy, but is stemmed from a love that is rooted in rich history, and a history that extends far beyond our now, a history that extends and a future that extends into eternity. We are not alone, and we are supported by your hand, and you are here to guide each and every one of us. And I just know that you are going to continue to extend your hand to every single one here this morning, and as we go out into our week, in Jesus' name. In Jesus' name, amen.